Welcome to the Tripod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn, he's the Padonis, and this is the live recap of round 21, where we had another really good weekend. We went 3-1 on best bets, which we'll take any week. One lost by a score, one won by a score, and 2-1 pretty comprehensively. We won the mixed matchup at 255 pretty easily as well. In fact, we doubled the amount of points that we needed to win that one with such a dominant first half showing by the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Still didn't win a multi. It seems like we can't get the recipe right for multis, but as we usually say, there's always room for improvement. As I throw to you, Padonis, why weren't we on the Knights just then? We've just seen the Knights hang on for dear life, and we can discuss that game last, but they did just win 14-10. And you know what I reckon? I reckon they were the ugly duckling. They were the side no one wanted to touch. And we are a pair of weak, gutted dogs for not jumping on the plus 6.5.
100%. It was 4.5 when we were doing the preview. We did lean Tigers at that number, but as I said on the Wednesday podcast, I felt like the Knights were just going to win this game somehow, and they ended up doing that. And the line ended up jumping out 6.5. And I think the Tigers were still in Suncorp Stadium last week. They looked pretty flat and disinterested, and we sort of warned against that. So people who wanted to lay the number with the Tigers, you weren't getting the best of the number, because in the NRL, it is such a grind. It's hard to win 2 weeks in a row back-to-back. And I think the Tigers were celebrating breaking a 7-game win streak, and they didn't start playing until the 50th minute. By then, the Knights had a 14-point lead. They jumped out to a great start, and the Knights did everything in their power to get the Tigers across the line in that second half. I think they had about 7 errors coming out of their own end, and a few of Adam Dewey's bombs were Burden-esque, and it put Tex Hoy under some pressure, and the back three had a torrid time. And just the Tigers, even right up until the end, they had a chance, and 6 again call with 30 seconds to go after a line break. And I don't know, just 3 straight runs from dummy half killed all the momentum, which is pretty.
There was actually a moment with like 30 seconds left where the Tigers had a fast play the ball, I thought, and they were spreading it right and looked like they had space and numbers. And then the ref waved 6 again. And I feel like Madden saw the 6 again and then didn't want to go for the all or nothing play shift to the right wing. And then he, for some reason, thought, I better take a settler, and went back in. And then they took 3 more settlers and spilled it. But you're right, we might as well put a bow in this game. The Knights look like a side doing everything possible to give the game away after being up 14-0. I'm happy for them that they got the win. You know, it's easy to say in hindsight. I was only kind of joking, saying we should have been on them, because when was this performance going to come? When was this 80-minute effort going to come? And in a way, it wasn't really an 80-minute effort. It was, a good 50 or 60 minutes that put them in front, and they were just able to cling on. And, of course, West Tigers have been admirable lately. You know, they foiled us last weekend at Suncorp Stadium. Very few people saw that result coming, but it was always going to be tougher. No Jackson Hastings, you noticed that today, and that's a tough one for them to lose in front of the home fans of Campbelltown. You know, it's a very winnable game when you play the Newcastle Knights, but it just goes to show nothing's that easy. I think a lot of people would have been on a perfect round going into that game too. I think I had every game right, and I was kind of thinking, I've tipped people into 8 out of 8 head-to-head winners here, but that's the NRL. And in fact, that game had big implications for a lot of punters. So why don't we hear how the bookies did in general, thanks to show sponsor Top Sport.
G'day, Tripod family. Up and down weekend, it's probably all going to come down to the Tigers-Knights game. So if the Tigers come back and win, I'm doing this at halftime, then punters will certainly finish on top. If the Knights can hold on, then we'll finish about square. So it was one of those weekends where a few of the well-backed teams won. Some numbers finished around the line, like the Roosters were very well supported. And then in the Storm Titans game, that game hovered around the 15 to 18.5 mark. So that late try was very, very costly and fell in a very awkward spot from our perspective. But then the Manly Parramatta game, that was a real good betting game, money both ways. And with the Eels winning 13 plus, that did sort of knock a few punters out of multis and those sort of things. But come Saturday, obviously one-way traffic for the Bunnies and the overs in their match. That was just unrelenting. Panthers game actually was an okay result, because there were some punters that really liked the Raiders, and I was surprised at their effort. I thought they'd really be able to push the Panthers all the way, particularly after scoring first. And then a lot of the multis rolled into the Sharkies on Saturday night. So that was a big move that they didn't quite cover the line, but a lot of head-to-head multis. So that game finished about a chop out. And then very interesting betting in the Bulldogs game. And it looked like the Bulldogs were a big chance of knocking out a number of those multis I just alluded to. But the Cowboys showed what they do, and they have done for most of the year, where they can run away with games late. So all in all, a very interesting weekend, and looking forward to seeing. We're getting close to the finals games. There's some really crucial games next week, so looking forward to previewing them on Wednesday. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tristan. So he does breathe a sigh of relief in that final minute of the Tigers game. Knights doing everything possible to give it away and to help a few punters out with their multis, but not to be. Now let's rewind. The opening match of the round was at the SCG, where the Sydney Roosters beat your Brisbane Broncos, but on us 34-16. We didn't have a bet on this one, and it's easy to say after the fact, but it seemed from the very first set that one team came with a lot more application and energy in this one. Roosters rolling up the field 70 metres in their opening set, and then the Broncos under 20 in theirs, and that was pretty much the tale of the match.
Yeah, it was. The first 15 minutes, the game was pretty much over, with the Roosters crossing the try line 3 times, Brisbane having an 18-blot start up against them, and they never recovered from there. I thought that their second half effort was admirable, the way that they were able to regain the momentum and really dominate the forward pack. But the Roosters' try line defense was also the second star of the show. I think Brisbane came at him time and time again. The Roosters repelled him, and I think Suwali had one of his best games of the season. I really feel that these guys in the Roosters back line are starting to really stamp their authority. And I think we're going to have to start looking at the Roosters, even though they're sitting in 8th at the moment, we're going to have to start looking at them as a top 4 side. I did lean towards the Broncos, and I did have a side bet with you on Thursday night, which you won. But yeah, Brisbane were pretty disappointing on the back of last week again. And maybe it's just a step too far for them against some of these elite sides. They've pick and choose some of their spots, but I definitely felt missing Carrigan was a big out, and I didn't think that it would be as significant as it was, but turns out that their middles really struggled early on, and they only gained ascendancy once the game was over.
Mind you, Carrigan or no Carrigan, I think they're just off the pace. I do think it goes back to the fact the Roosters didn't get pushed too hard, had a full 7-day turnaround, no travel. Last week was in Sydney, this week still at home. Brisbane, short turnaround. It does make a difference this point in the season, where everyone's petrol tank is a little bit lower, and you take a couple of days to recovery, and you just don't get a lot of time to prepare. And the Roosters are, one of the form sides in the competition. And as you say, they're 8th on the ladder, but they're much better than 8th in terms of power ratings. And we certainly, feel that way and respect this side. And I've said all along, even during their 4-game losing streak, if they get things right, they're still going to be a side no one really wants to play in the finals. And a really interesting move that they made this week was obviously shifting Sam Walker to halfback and Keary to 5'8". And you see the rewards. And last year when Keary was out, Sam Walker was playing halfback, and they had several other players playing 5'8". And then Keary's been out, Walker moved to halfback, and Manu played some games. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you get Keary back in, you don't lose Manu, because Manu moves out to the centres and causes teams nightmares. You got Teddy playing off the back of everything that you generate and you go forward. But the logical thing was always to me that Walker's a natural halfback and Keary's more of that ball-running threat. And it seems like, my question is, why weren't they doing this earlier? But they are a frightening side in attack. And obviously Brisbane got a couple of late tries, but the Roosters always kind of comfortably in front in this one. And compounded with the Raiders loss that we'll get to, now puts the Roosters certainly in the box seat to make a finals run. And they could even climb up a few spots. I think it's so tight, really, everywhere from about 4th to 8th. There's only 1 or 2 wins separating those sides. Friday was in Melbourne, the Storm winning 32-14 with a try right on the bell that Tristan mentioned. And if you had the Titans, hopefully you got plus 18.5, but the line most of the week was plus 16.5, plus 17.5, and you still were covering that until the final minute, where the Titans had the ball and spilled it, and then the Storm scored off a scrum. And not only that, the touchy called it forward, and Then the Storm scored, thought they had scored, celebrated, then all paused, and then all looked up frustrated. And then the ref said, no, I was in line. I'm overruling the touchy, which you don't often see. So on the other side of the coin, there could be plenty of people following along who had that Storm minus 17.5, and that was lifeblood for them to get that try. So it always goes both ways. Isn't it crazy sometimes how the spread and the total, in fact, I think both were decided on the final play of this game. But what else did you take away from this one? For Donna, something we didn't know going into it was Munster was going to revert back to fullback, and he was unbelievable again.
Yeah, Munster was pretty elite in this game, I felt. I think the Storm took all the momentum into the contest on the back of that Warriors win, and you could tell the Titans are a team lacking in confidence. And I think the story of this half, or I think the story of the game, was the fact that the Titans had very rare field position, and Melbourne really constricted them and kept the Titans in their own end of it. The Titans seemed to score every time they got down to the Storm's line, which is pretty uncharacteristic for Melbourne teams in the past. And I just wonder if the Titans were able to execute a bit better and get down the end a bit more often, then whether or not Melbourne would have conceded a few more tries, because I definitely feel like there's a disadvantage with their back line defensively. With some of those key outs that we touched on. Xavier Coates came back and scored the first try of the game. So congratulations to him. We haven't seen him since he went out in the first half over at ANZ Stadium at Accor in the first game of the Origin. And he touched on the line there. But I think if he did have 18.5, he also was sweating a sideline conversion, which was missed by Munster, thankfully. But I think the Storm were the rifle side and they were going to get the win. It was just about much of how many. And the Storm can look forward to trying to get to a top 4 berth and just building on that win.
Yeah, that's right, because now all of a sudden the team that had lost 4 in a row, they've now won a couple in a row. They're playing at Penrith next week, who we all know are a bit under strength, but we'll get to Penrith. They look good this weekend, while the Storm, it's not all perfect. Xavier Coates back, that's great, but Jerome Hughes, dislocated shoulder. The reports I've seen this weekend, not a serious one, but it will cost him a game or two in all likelihood. Now, this one billed as a massive contest, and certainly Manly Seagulls needed 2 points at home at 4 Pines to keep their season alive. They weren't able to get it. A match that was highly entertaining and back and forth for 60, 65 minutes. But thankfully for us, in our best bet, which was Parramatta plus half a try, it was the Eels who came home strong. You know, they got criticised last week. You lost the second half against 12 men against Penrith. That's all everyone wanted to say. And there were lots of reasons why people doubted our tip of Parramatta in this one. And during the game, as I said, it was in the balance, maybe 20, 25 to go. Parramatta was down 2 points, which I actually thought was going to really show the beauty of taking that try handicap. Because, you know, fair question, people say, what's the point of the try handicap? Or why would you take plus half a try, just take them to win? Well, Parramatta was down at one stage 20 to 18, but they had actually scored 1 more try than Manly. So that Manly could have won the game by 8 points and we still would have won our plus half a try. And then when Parramatta hit the front and it was 24-20 to Parramatta with 15 to go, we knew it would take 3 Seagulls tries to beat us. Whereas if you had head-to-head, it would only take 1 Seagull try to beat you. So I thought that was really going to evidence, you know, if you can execute with the best possible market your handicap, you can, you know, win some games even if the side that you like doesn't necessarily win or cover the spread. In the end, Parramatta covers it any which way. You backed them because they're the ones that ran in those late tries and finished very strong. And maybe people are going to give Parramatta a little bit more respect, and it certainly keeps them in the top 4 hunt. Whereas Manly, it's going to be easy for people to say that, you know, that this has all happened because of the decisions of players in round 20. But at some point, just give credit to Parramatta because that was a very strong performance and 2 try assists by my namesake, Jacob, at halfback there, another guy that was pretty maligned and scrutinised and criticised going in. Well, he did his job and his team got the 2 points, but honest.
Yeah, this game was a sellout and it was a great crowd and atmosphere, and there was a small chance perhaps Manly weren't going to come in switched on the back of the Pride jersey stuff last week, but I think Manly did show that they are together still as a squad, and it was a great back and forth contest for at least an hour. I really felt the turning point in this game was the knock on from Morgan Harper when Will Penasini and Morgan Harper were trying to challenge the ball near the goal line. I just don't know what Morgan Harper was doing, though, because it felt like he was shepherding it like he was the defender. He was the attacker. All he had to do was just dive on the ball, and he might have just slid over the line, and it would have been a 4-point to Manly. And then all of a sudden, it would have been 24-18 with a kick to come, and Manly would have been in the box seat to win the game. But I think that really dented the confidence, and Parramatta go up the other end 2 minutes later and score their own try. And we should also say that the star of this show was Dylan Brown, who really stepped up on the back of missing Moses. So he really had to stamp his authority. And I'm glad you mentioned Jacob Arthur, because the Arthurs, including Brad, his dad, the coach, had been copped some criticism over the last few weeks. Some of it right, some of it wrong. But I think Parramatta have showed that they're still riding this premiership hunt.
It's a long season, eh? We all cop criticism at times. We all have bad weeks. But if you stick to task and you believe in what you're doing, you're going to get the rewards at some point. Parramatta, they look like a dangerous team, especially when you know Moses is only out with that finger, and then originally it was reported 4 weeks, but it may be less. They can give the competition a real shake. The Harper one, it was a massive moment. I thought maybe he was being clever. Maybe he knew he was between the defender and the ball, but a second that he plays at the ball, the defender can play at him. So he's thinking, if I can shepherd it and let it roll to the try line, then the second that I can play at the ball, I'm grounding it. And you know what? It nearly worked out for him, because he did ground it, and the bunker took a look and they said he grounded it just short, which it was very close. And I think it was because that's how the on-field ref called it. And the other thing about Manly is I just felt like their gun players didn't really step up. Like, I know DCE, he does almost all the kicking. He probably did try his best. But like Jake Toroyevich, as much as we all applaud how huge he was in Origin 2, what a difference he made to the Blues, like, did you notice him on Friday night? Did you notice Ola Kuatu, who's been Manly's best player all season? At one point I was like, is he even on? Garrick's had better games. So if your star players aren't stepping up when you need them the most, you're not going to beat quality teams. For Parramatta, their big guns did step up, and the big guns were out on show at the Sunny Coast on Saturday afternoon when the Rabbitohs beat the Warriors 48-10, catching our first half bet just. We had -6.5 in the first half. It was 36-6. We also had, for the mixed matchup, Rabbitohs first half points only. So we only gave ourselves 40 minutes to score for our mixed matchup. But that was more than enough, as I say, 36.6 tries scored in the first half alone. And that needed to be more than what the Dragons output, which in the end was 18. So this game went basically as well as it could for us. Although one of your multi Padonis, I don't know if it would have won anyway. Please tell me that it didn't decide the multi, because we're lucky that, in this case, we took a first half line on a big favourite and they covered by a mile. Whereas if we had taken the second half line, can you believe that the Rabbitohs won 48-10, but only won the second half by 8 points and did not cover the -9.5 second half somehow, Padonis?
Yeah, that was an absolutely crazy stat there. I think the line ended up going from 16.5 to 20.5 at kickoff, and South came out all guns blazing. And isn't it great when you can set up yourself for the back end of the season? You can rest all your best guys, and you have the luxury of putting Mitchell on the bench to keep him fresh, because the game was over after about half an hour. South were dominant. I think the Warriors were just a little bit flat, out enthused, and I think it's a case of the Bunnies just peaking at the right time. And last week's performance against the Sharks, we said that was just a great game between two sides that were going back and forth in the final style atmosphere, and take nothing away from that loss for South, because they could have very easily won with a few of those missed field goals from Latrell Mitchell. But I really think that some of these good sides now are going to start to show their class and really separate against some of these lower teams with nothing to play for.
But there's something to be said for the Rabbitohs to dust themselves off after a very tough defeat on Saturday night and come out and play their best footy, because Brisbane had the same thing happen to them Saturday night and didn't recover. So sometimes, a deflating down to the wire loss, it takes it out of you emotionally as well as physically. But the Warriors didn't really present much of a challenge. They were pretty close to traffic cones out there. I mean, maybe fought back a little bit second half, but as you say, Latrell Mitchell comes off the field. The game is so far in hand that people are just making sure they kind of get through unscathed. But Rabbitohs, I think that field goal shootout and ultimately falling short in Golden Point a week ago, maybe why they won't be top 4. But this win still keeps them in the hunt. things can happen and upsets can occur. As Dan Lever says, the Warriors are weak gutted dog people, but we'll leave that for others to judge. So this game was probably surprising. Tristan mentioned that it was a bit of a surprise to him and that there was a fair bit of money on the home side, the Canberra Raiders, but they were beaten 26-6 by a Penrith Panthers side, missing Luai, Cleary, as we knew, but also Kickow withdrawn a day or two before kickoff as well. So that's 3 of your star players out, and it didn't seem to matter, although the Raiders scored the first try in this one. That was all they scored. Panthers, who couldn't have been the more motivated team, beat the Raiders. Dare I say the Raiders were weak gutted dogs in this one.
Yeah, I think Penrith were the ones that looked like the more motivated and enthusiastic team. And I think after Canberra scored their first try on the back of a few errors from the Panthers, it was 26-0 after that, and it was all Penrith, really. Canberra couldn't fire a shot with the ball. I think the story of this game was how dominant the Penrith defensive line was, both in their own end and on their own try line, and then also how good Dylan Edwards was out the back. Numerous occasions saving the Panthers or setting up some plays and line breaks. And I think he's gone underrated as one of those fullback options that he doesn't get all the kudos that guys like Tedesco and Mitchell get, because those guys have the flashy plays. But Edwards is the guy that's always going to be there and probably runs the most kilometres in the NRL. And I really thought that Penrith made a line in the sand after last week, and all their backup guys, in particular Salmon and O'Sullivan, were also brilliant. I don't think I've seen a game from O'Sullivan that was as good controlling and game managing. And as a Broncos fan, he was pretty terrible for us for a good 12 months. But yeah, I think Penrith almost ended the Raiders season because I think it really showed in the press conference as well how you've all heard about Ricky Stewart with those comments about Salmon, and maybe the frustrations got to him. And I think it was a game Canberra expected to win. It was a near sellout at home as well, but it definitely didn't pan out that way. And Penrith on to the minor premiership march.
Now, on the other hand, if you're a Dolphins fan, you're actually really happy the way this has worked out. O'Sullivan showing that he's a very capable playmaker and getting really valuable NRL experience before he does move north for the new venture. You say ends the Raiders season. I mean, we said before this was never probably a game on paper that they thought they'd win until the week leading up, where they realised, hey, we're in good form here, we're coming home, and we're catching Penrith at a very vulnerable time, and that what an opportunity this is. And now they've wasted that opportunity. I said probably 2 or 3 weeks ago when I looked at the ladder, I think 30 points makes the finals. Now, the Raiders would have to win their final, how many games are left? 4 games. They're going to have to win their final 4, and they'll get to 30. And I said on Wednesday, the Raiders will be favourites in all those games. And the toughest game they've got left might be Manly. And Manly's like possibly dead, right? So we can't say the Raiders are out of it. But maybe 30 points doesn't make the 8. Maybe they might end up level on 30 with the Roosters. And the Roosters are going to have the far superior points differential. So I think when you say the loss itself doesn't kill the Raiders, but the fact that the Roosters won and look so good and don't look like they're going to drop many games, Roosters have a lot of tougher opponents coming up. But I would definitely say I can say pretty confidently that the Raiders are on a tightrope right now. They can't afford to drop any more. And Penrith plays the Storm next week, and that's going to be super intriguing. You know, both of them are going to be missing some key players. But I feel like the Storm wants to get revenge for what Penrith did to them at Magic Round. But this Penrith side is showing that they're not easy beats even when they are missing some gun players. Saturday night was our one losing best bet of the round. Unfortunately, although we picked the team that won the game, and that wasn't that hard to do, Cronulla 24-18 victors over the Dragons. As Siebes says, the Dragons not even a mathematical chance to make the 8. Sorry about that. They did make a bit of a fight back for Donis, and unfortunately, that's why we didn't win our best bet, which was -1.5 tries, because Sharks only won by 1 try.
I really feel like it's another game where we had the right side and just didn't get the result. For all intents and purposes, with the Sharks winning 18-6 at halftime, you just expect them to carry on with it. But the second half, they were a little bit poor with the ball. They had a few chances as well on the Dragons line just to get to two score lead again after the Dragons scored to go to 18 to 10, I think it was, but 18-12. But yeah, it wasn't to be. The Dragons showed some spirit, but I really feel like the turning point was that Brayley sin bin just before halftime. Had that have not happened, then it probably would have been just a continuation of what we saw in the first half, because the Sharks were so dominant. But it just goes to show as well that even though that the Sharks did make all those errors, they were able to defend those errors, and they're a team that can withstand adversity. And then the other talking point as well is whether or not Tariq Sims should have been sent off. I know that there was some controversy around that. He got charged today, and it's looking like a 4-week ban, so that'll end his time in Dragons colours, because they're not going to make the finals, and he's heading off to Melbourne next year, as everyone knows. But yeah, that was I think Sims almost resigned on the field to thinking that he was going to get sent off, but maybe, I don't know, maybe that he showed some remorse saved him a bit. But yeah, it was just a shame the Sharks couldn't take advantage with that man up. They weren't able to score a try in that period, and then their 2 tries came after that. And even then, you were still confident heading into halftime. I know that you had your double multi with the Sharks to win in the second half, which was probably paying like $1.30, but it just goes to show
$1.42, and a 2-way market as well. It was a good leg.
And the line closed at 11.5 for all those people that did like the Sharks. And Nico Hines kicked all the conversions, and that's one of the reasons we did take the try handicap, because we felt there was an edge to Lomax. But yeah, you win some, you lose some, and yeah, we go 3-1, and that was our only loser.
Yeah. Now you mentioned like Tariq Sims looks sick and looks so remorseful. That can't factor into the decision, but maybe it did. I'll say this: he easily could have been sent off. Now there were a few sin bins this week. We didn't mention Fisher Harris put a high shot on, got a sin bin for Penrith. Obviously, they withstood that. There were one or two others as well. I can't even remember off the top of my head, but obviously a couple of sin bins in this game. And what every commentator is saying is, well, if Tom Burgess got sent off last week, then that's a send-off. But I don't want the Tom Burgess decision to govern every decision moving forward this season, because I said a week ago, he put the hit on in the 87th minute. It did not make a difference whether they sent him off or gave him 10 minutes. So it's easy to be harsh when it makes no difference. If you're going to be harsh, in this case, it was the 12th minute. If you're going to be harsh, it's game over. If you want to send him, no one's going to criticize the referees. And if they send Sims off, we would have easily won our bet. But I'm really not bitter about that, because you can't say, oh, well, if the opponent got a player sent off after 12 minutes, we would have won our bet. Like we want to make bets that aren't relying on that. And I won't even go as far to say we had the right side. Like, yeah, Sharkies were up 3-1 at halftime. But one of the reasons we bet this was because we didn't know if the Dragons really had any fight left in them. And give the Dragons credit, they did fight back. They had the ball right at the end of the game. Why don't we talk about that strategy? Adonis, 3 minutes to go. Dragons are down 8. They get a penalty for offside. Like, what would you have done right then? Talk me through the last couple of minutes in your eyes.
Yeah, so we've been saying this on the pod a few times. When you're down by 8, you want to get it back to one score as quickly as possible. You don't want to burn that time on the clock. So I think Ben Hunt had the right idea. He signalled to go for 2. Lomax was all the way on the other side of the field, and you could see Ben Hunt on air when they showed him on the camera, and he was shouting out a few colourful words to Lomax to hurry up and take the kickoff, and it paid off for the Dragons, because on the back end of that set off the conversion, they had a bomb. They got a repeat set, and it was just a shame that they were able to fumble their way to the 80th minute, because the last 10 minutes or so in that game, they weren't really trying to score. I felt they were just too much one-out running, and I think it would have been a brilliant strategy, and everyone would have been all over it had they have won the game, and it would have been all over the papers and the news. But it was the right approach, but just, poor execution in the final plays.
And I was going to say, like, there were players missing for the Sharkies. No Dale Finucane. They missed his leadership there in the middle of the field. No Moylan, no Will Kennedy. And I think you noticed these, because I think if Sharks at full strength would have put the Dragons more so to the sword, whereas the way it worked out, and I think we mentioned Brayley got sin binned like 2 minutes before halftime. The Dragons did score when they were playing against 12 to open the second half. That helped them get back in the game. And in the end, the Sharkies just hanging on. And I've thought about this. Like, if you want to say they should have just tapped and gone for it, and, you're at the try line there, so you get your chance to score a try. And people have said to me it's different now because of the 2-point field goal. Like, you don't have to get to the opponent's try line twice. So if you're down 8, maybe you do go for the try, and obviously you're going to receive the kickoff. And then all you got to do is kind of get within 40 and you have a chance to tie. I'm happy with take the 2. You mentioned that Hunt was like trying to persuade Lomax to be as urgent as possible. It didn't work. He took his sweet time lining up the penalty goal. It negates the fact that you're trying to score twice, because there was 3 minutes and like 17 seconds when they got the penalty, and the clock actually stopped because the Sharkies had taken an intercept and were running down the field. So the ref said time off. You got to kick that. Like, I know that you're going to say, well, he has to kick it, so he can't rush his process. No, if your percentage goes down a few percent because you rush it, the percentages still says if you can score with 3 minutes to go, you're going to get the ball for 2 more full sets in all likelihood. He took 1:20 to kick the penalty goal to cut it to 6, which Tristan mentioned to me really hurt Top Sport. And I was thinking, why? I think because the final score 24-18, it pushed the total over. So the total goes over. There's always betting implications. Funnily enough, we took -1.5 tries, so it didn't affect us. But I was looking for -7.5. I would have played that. Like, that would have been better, but we couldn't get that. Imagine if we had -7.5 and the Dragons are down 8 and take the 2. So we avoided that. But he kicked it with like 2 minutes to go. The Dragons received the kickoff. They're only going to get it for 1 set. They got lucky that they actually got it back off a bomb. I don't even think it was the correct call. I don't think there was a Sharks touch, but nonetheless, the Dragons had the ball. So crazy to think the Dragons had the ball on the Sharks try line down 6 late in this game. So that, again, that's why I won't say we had it right. Laying over a converted try with Cronulla just wasn't to be for us. But we applied the same logic really to our next best bet, which was Cowboys, which in this case we did take -9.5, which is very, very similar to a -1.5 try line. And we took it because we've got a side that is in great form this season. Is every point matters when you're trying to secure a good position in the top 4, or in the Cowboys' case, top 2. In this case, we saw a bit of revenge factor for the Cowboys, who were beaten by the Bulldogs earlier this season, as we can recall. And the game was in Bundaberg, so it was a kind of a sneaky flipped home advantage here, where the Bulldogs, good on them, took one on the road, but it was the Cowboys who didn't have to travel as far from home and probably had more of the support. However, it didn't begin that way. In fact, it was the side from Sydney that scored the first 2 tries and had us a bit nervous, but honest.
Yeah, I've got to admit, I was nervous as well watching that first half, but the Dogs started brilliantly, and you could really tell that the confidence they have with the ball, they're willing to spread it, offload, kick early, just to really try to put the back 3 under pressure and try to take advantage of any half opportunities. And they got their rewards with the 10-0 lead. But I think it was a case of the Cowboys starting a bit slow. On top of that, the Dogs had a massive advantage behind their back with the wind. And that's another factor at some of these stadiums and some of these conditions to monitor if you are betting on first half or second half lines, because, your odds or your chances of winning can be flipped drastically just depending on whether you have the wind or whether you're against it. And I would have felt much more comfortable had we've taken the Cowboys -5.5 second half line, which was never in doubt. But the Cowboys showed some great fight and spirit to get back into that game in the first half. And I really felt that was driven on the back of Ruben Cotter coming on, and their bench were just phenomenal in this game. And I think Cotter ended up topping the run meters for all forwards in the game. And one of the reasons we did take him on Wednesday is because we thought that all those guys were back and we were hoping that they were going to start. But I think Payton's going to definitely be starting him next week. That's for sure. And the Cowboys, show their class late, again, as they did in the Dragons game, putting on a few tries. Drinkwater, brilliant again. And I think that the shows how good their depth is now as well, where you can miss Kyle Feld and have a guy like Hammer. And one of the other highlights in this game that I really enjoyed was when Burton kicked it off a scrum in his own half, and we could see a mini race between Burton and Hammer, and Hammer.
Addo-Carr and Hammer.
Yeah, sorry, Addo-Carr and Hammer, and Hammer got him easy. Definitely like to see that grand final sprint come back, because I think that's pretty exciting at halftime rather than hearing a performer play a song. But that's a debate for another day. But yeah, Cowboys more of the same and get back up to the second place and just to cement their top four hopes. And they're definitely on track for a home final now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Home final in the top four. And that was breathtaking. There was a turnover and it was like first tackle, but Burton kicks ahead for Addo-Carr. And against most teams, that's probably going to be a try in open field. And the player that doesn't have to change direction has the advantage in a race like that. But Hammer looked like he was cruising and he won that race. So, but I can't take much away from Addo-Carr because he scored the opening try in this game and he's pretty much been the form winger in the comp ever since, being overlooked for Origin. And how good's Matty Burton's form? Like, he kicked a dropout 70 metres. I know he had that big breeze behind him, but just in general, he's a star. And I thought, like, yeah, by no means was our bet going to be safe. Like, even though they had the breeze at their back, I wasn't putting it all down to that. I'm like, the Dogs can get the upset here if the Cowboys don't step it up. It was 10-all half-time. Once again, Cowboys' second half line, as you mentioned, is a winner, which we did play last week. And in this case, they covered the full game line in the second half alone. We do believe that fitness is a real thing. Like, I don't think it was all just because they had the wind at their back that they came back. This side has superior fitness to pretty much everyone else in the competition. And what I've been thinking about, there's a bit of chat in the last couple of weeks of players changing clubs before the August 1 deadline. I feel like the transfer of Luciano Leilua to the Cowboys could end up being the most impactful mid-season swap of any player. He's a massive pickup for them. He's a super talented, super versatile, dangerous, wide-running forward. And he's had a try today, which let's talk about that because I thought that was a double movement reviewed by the bunker.
Agreed.
Ball carrying arm hits the ground. He's stationary, and then he reaches over his head and scores. And they gave that one. But then a few minutes earlier, I guess it was a square up because Taulagi scored for all money. Would have been great for us. We got our money back in the end. Toppy was kind enough to avoid the winning mood 2 or 3 because Connor Tracy got knocked out first minute. This was after Latrell, as if Latrell was ever not going to score in that game. But what it all came down to today, anyone that backed that bet, you're either going to win if Taulagi scored or get your money back. So we're cheering Taulagi. He did score. And they called it like a knock-on against Val. And I had 2 problems with that. One, I thought it was off his chest. And 2, I didn't think it went forwards. And then the bunker never ceases to amaze. Gives the Luciano try, as I said before. But I was only brought that up because I was praising Luciano. It's not his fault. He's a problem for opposition defenses. And, look, the bunker, those calls are going to go for you and against you. It did hurt us, all fellow pod followers who do follow the 2 or 3. Unfortunately, you only get your money back, but we'll fight another day on that one. And we already discussed the arm wrestle at Campbelltown, so that will do it. That will wrap round 21. I don't know if we're going to be back this time next week. We'll let you know about the recap next week because we've got some special plans. We won't unveil that, but we'll let you know when our recap will be. You'll see us next time on Wednesday night anyway to preview round 22. We have been in great form. Like, we're starting to get to the point where we've been apologising for half the season on our results. But now we're 56% winners. There's so many tipsters in the world that would kill to be 56%. That's an elite winning rate. It feels like it's all changed pretty quickly. But, we just got to stick at it. Don't change too much and keep trying to find plays that will give us the best opportunity for success. So great work, Predonis. Thanks for joining me tonight. Thanks to everyone who has tuned in. Have a great week. We'll see you Wednesday.